It's Carving Up the Context Day. It's Wednesday. Carving Up the Context and Bryson's Best 10 Day. Two of my favorite segments I do. And in Carving Up the Context, there's always a story. There's always something that I try to look at and say, hey, is there something to kind of pull out of this? Well, there is. Bill Belichick and the Atlanta Falcons looked like they were close to a deal until a certain pretty notable individual in the NFL stepped in and kind of nixed it. So here we go. In this week's edition of Carving the Context, we're going to talk about Bill Belichick. So as prime time, Deion Sanders says, give me my theme music. On this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, let's talk about Bill Belichick, who was, let's just say him and the Patriots amicably agreed to part ways at the conclusion of the 2023 season, which concluded 24 years of what was one of the greater runs by a head coach in any franchise, in any sport that we've seen. 6 Super Bowl titles, countless AFC championships, even more so division titles. I think the Patriots got like 18 in that stretch that he had when he was with Brady, which is nuts. But Belichick was on the open market. 8 teams, a quarter of the league, needed head coaches. None of them hired a guy who some consider to be the greatest coach ever. A new report came out from 3 sources who are about as close to the New England Patriots as you could possibly be, okay? Don Van Netta, Seth Wickersham, and Jeremy Fowler. All excellent sources. Trust anything that they say. They came out with a piece on ESPN this morning that was fascinating, I found. So Arthur Blank is the owner of the Atlanta Falcons, and he is, by all accounts, pretty good friends with Robert Kraft, which a lot of billionaires are friends with billionaires. That's just, you are the company you keep. And the Falcons, if you remember 2-3 months ago, interviewed Belichick not once but twice, and it looked like, okay, Bill's going to Atlanta. He's going to the NFC South. He's going to go be at the Falcons. Obviously, that would have meant he'd have had Kirk Cousins as his quarterback, a young, talented, fun Atlanta roster. Probably would have been the favorites to win the division this coming year. Still are anyway, one could argue, although we'll see what Tampa Bay does. And according to this article, Robert Kraft had a conversation with Atlanta Falcons owner Arthur Blank and essentially deterred the Falcons from hiring Belichick. Basically, it was like, hey, I don't know if you want to do this. I don't know if you want to hire this guy. Like, watch out. Like, you're my butt. And again, I don't know how close Blank and Kraft are. Again, a lot of owners are buddies with each other. That's pretty common. A lot of owners are enemies with each other. That's also common. But these two seem to be relatively tight. So it makes sense for Blank to call Belichick's former employer, former boss, and say, hey, what do you think? You know him about as well as anybody. And Kraft's like, I don't think you should hire him. I think y'all be better off going in a different direction. So I don't know what the motive was for Kraft to do such a thing. I don't think it's a strategical thing because, listen, the Patriots and the Falcons are in different conferences. I know, obviously, you think about Super Bowl 51, the 28-3 comeback, but there's no rivalry between the two. There's no bad blood, to my knowledge, at least. This, to me, this whole Belichick fiasco that we've seen over the last, really since Brady left, and how he's kind of gotten exposed to a degree through the Patriots document, the Dynasty documentary, which I have not seen yet. I'm reading the book right now. I haven't even gotten to the actual Dynasty part of the book. I have not watched the documentary. I will as soon as I finish the book by oh my gosh, what's the guy's name? Jeff Benedict, who's a great author. But what we've seen with the documentary, all the reports, we knew his relationship with Brady was at best icy and at worst cold. Well, I guess that's the same thing. The last few years that he was in New England, that Tom was in New England. And now you have this report. Kraft is like, hey, guy who has 6 Super Bowl rings, probably not the best option for your franchise. This, to me, carving up the context of this is, don't burn bridges. Treat people the right way. If you have any sort of, you don't have to be best buddies with everybody, but be approachable. Be I mean, the guy who's employing you, at least try to be friendly to him or her. If they're not friendly back, okay, that's you control what you can control. And it's a lesson that when you're partnered with somebody who's equally successful as you are, and ego steps in and you let it affect your outlook, you let it affect how you view yourself in a certain way. And then when that certain somebody leaves, just like a marriage, you got two successful people, one leaves, it's just as successful, even more so. That's Tom Brady going to the Tampa Bay Bucks. And the other is left behind, isn't as successful, maybe doesn't have the greatest relationship with other family members, and his or her ex are flourishing. That's Belichick. That's Brady. Brady is beloved in Patriots land. He's beloved by former teammates. Gronk and Edelman talk about him like he's their twin brother. They freaking love that guy. Belichick, Edelman, Gronk still speak highly of him. Matthew Slater, they defended him when that dynasty happened. Okay, my man Tim Barnard hosts the Boston Sports Summit, which airs in about 15 minutes here on the grid. Definitely check that out. He talked about hey, these guys are defending him. That's got to say something. And it absolutely does. These guys know Belichick as well as anybody. But I argue Robert Kraft knew him better than anyone else. And when it came down to certain decisions where Kraft, for the majority of the dynasty, was like, hey, Bill, you make the personnel decisions. When Tom Brady is a little kind of looking over his shoulder, he sees this kid, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Belichick's kind of grooming him to be the future of the franchise. And Brady makes it apparent to Robert Kraft, hey, I don't like this at all. Robert Kraft overrules Belichick. He says, no, we're getting rid of Jimmy G. And Belichick, out of spite, just basically gives him away for a box of cookies to the San Francisco 49ers. So when you have that sort of icy relationship, which has happened over the course of 20 years, as Belichick has let the success affect his ego, affect his viewpoint. I've often criticized Belichick, and to a much lesser degree, but I've criticized him, Mike Tomlin, on is the game passing them by. You can't win Super Bowls just led by great defenses. You need Patrick Mahomes. You need Joe Burrow. You need the elite quarterbacks. You need Tom Brady, who happened to be in your building, and as we saw in Tampa, still a lot left in him. And he kicked him out the back door. Kraft, I think, looks at that and says, given Bill's recent drafts and the fact that I didn't overrule, I had a chance. I'm the owner. I can make any decision I want. See Jerry Jones in Dallas. I could have kept Tom. And Belichick overruled me, basically kicked Tom out the back door. And that it's not like it took Tom 2-3 years. Immediately wins a Super Bowl, not with the 49ers, not with the Steelers, not with this historically successful franchise. Goes to the freaking Bucks and wins a Super Bowl in a pandemic year. I think at that moment, Bob Kraft looked around and he's like, I will never forgive this guy because I could have had another Super Bowl championship. We could have had number 7 in Foxborough, and instead it went to Tampa, which, listen, I love Tampa Bay. It's obviously Tom Brady loves it. I think he might still live there. But you don't think that bothered Robert Kraft? I had a decision on who let go, and I let go of the wrong guy. It's kind of a little Oklahoma City Thunder-esque, where Kevin Durant was a free agent, but they kind of babied Westbrook, and they let the wrong guy go. Katie goes on to win championships and finals MVPs, and Russell is a consistent round 1 exit. Make sure you build relationships with the right people. Make sure you're at bare minimum friendly to them. Listen, you can be a certain way around your players. Again, Belichick is kind of the old school drill sergeant, which I don't know if that really works in the modern NFL. If you look at today's coaches, you can coach guys hard. You can't, you can't treat the backup left tackle equally to Tom Brady. You just can't, because he's just not as valuable. Coach guys hard, but there are levels to this. Jimmy Johnson had a great quote one time. There was a situation where, I think it was Michael Irvin. It was one of the star players in the Cowboys in the 90s, and some of the other backups fell asleep in a meeting. They fell asleep, just went out in a meeting. And Troy Aikman asked Jimmy Johnson, Troy Aikman, quarterback Cowboys, asked Jimmy Johnson, he's like, hey, like, you're not going to, like, because Jimmy Johnson was the ultimate drill sergeant. He asked Jimmy Johnson, he's like, you're not going to cut, like Michael Irvin, whoever it was, right? He said, no, I'm a playmaker. I'm not cutting Michael Irvin. But that backup tight end, he's out of here. I don't want to see his face around this facility. I'm not quoting verbatim, but that's essentially how the story went. Belichick didn't even operate from that. It's, you follow my rule, doesn't matter who you are. It's gotten them one playoff appearance in which they got spanked by 30 to the Buffalo Bills. And every year since has been a losing season. Not to mention the drafts have been awful. Brady went on to have success. He won a Super Bowl one year, finished second for MVP the next year, and was not great his last year in Tampa and probably his last year in the NFL, but did throw 25 touchdown passes and I think set the NFL record for completions. He could still play. Better than what New England had. I think Bob Kraft is a prideful man, is a successful man, is a risk-taking man. And he looked at that. I think February 7th, 2021, as cold as the relationship was with Belichick, I think that essentially ended it. Where it's, yeah, we can't work this anymore. That's where I'm at on this entire fiasco. So, this week's edition of Carving Up the Context. Be careful who you piss off, because it could come back to bite you. And it appears cost Bill Belichick the Falcons job, which wasn't, I mean, Raheem Morris, props to him. I think he's going to work really well with that squad. Would have been a nice job for Bill to have, coming off an untalented Patriots team. You get Kirk Cousins, say what you want about Kirk. He's way better than what New England had. You got Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, this really nice, young, talented defense, an easy peasy lemon squeezy division in an easy NFC relative to the AFC. Arthur Blank goes to Robert Kraft. Nah, we'll pass. We'll go with Raheem Morris. That tells you a lot. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.